The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Great to have you in the weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, and you. Mark Cranack coming along here shortly. It's been a pretty interesting 24 hours, man. I've got the old, and well, old, a relative word, the older and the young with my weekend that kicked off last night with a dear friend's 40th birthday party. She is 40 going on 25. Friend of my wife's, and Junior tomorrow is blowing out 18 candles, which blows me away. And there's no Nebraska football today, but there is a cornucopia of great college football, some Big 12 battles, some SEC showdowns, a Big 10 Friday special last night with UCLA and Iowa, and we'll dive into last night's ball game and what it means for Nebraska, specifically in reference to some of the moves made this week by the Big Red. We'll get our starting five shout-outs going here. Appreciate all of you joining us here on the stream. Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter, KFOR Facebook and Twitter. And are we streaming on the Big Hail Varsity or no?
Not this morning.
Not this morning. Okay. So we'll save that for likely for next Friday when Elijah's in LA. I'm at Ameristar, and Mark Cranack is. I haven't figured out where you're going to be. Cranack, I love the stocking cap. Mark, ho ho ho.
Yeah.
Joy to all. Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, nice to see you as well. It's good to be here.
Are you one of the guys who's already listening to Christmas music? There's a station here at our station that has already switched over to Christmas music, and it makes me feel slightly uncomfortable. But if you're one of those people, that's okay.
I'm not, but I can fully accept it. You can fully accept Christmas, I think, post Halloween. Mm-hmm. You got to get through Halloween first, though.
It's tough for me.
Well, because once Thanksgiving hit, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, you got to kind of put together as a group, right? You know, pumpkin probably being the transition between,
right?
You know, that's about the only thing, right? The pumpkin kind of can get you from Halloween to Thanksgiving. Then pumpkin goes away, but it's kind of, yeah. I can easily do that.
See, I'm one of those people. I'm avoidant of most things Christmas up until Thanksgiving, where it's like, hey, if you put the tree up the day before Thanksgiving, I'm forgivable. Like, I get it. If you put up at some point during November, I get it. But I'm one of the people, I don't want to see a Christmas tree until Black Friday. You know,
but then that only gives you like 3 or 4 weeks though.
Oh, only a month of having a tree up. Oh,
well, it's a lot of work for some of us that don't like to dig into the spare room area as a kid and then haul the 3 parts of the tree up. It was a big tree. It was an ugly tree anyway, and then put it away. My wife has like 4 trees in the spare area. I pray someday the German Shepherd eats all of them, just because. I mean, it looks glorious up here, but then it stays up till probably the Final Four.
See, that's the thing. See, Black Friday is like, I think that's the deadline.
To get it up?
That's the deadline. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. No, it is. It is the deadline, but it's also the first day I want to see it up. I think your range of being able to put up a Christmas tree is roughly 2 days. My humble opinion. Yeah, you get Thanksgiving night, you get Black Friday, and then you get that Saturday. But once that Sunday rolls around, if it's not up, you're too late.
I think by the following Sunday after Black Friday, I think if you get too deep into December, we're talking Big 10 championship, Big 12 championship Saturday.
Yeah,
you've lost your opportunity.
Yeah, you got to get it up a little bit earlier than that.
You got that week post Black Friday, signing day, and then you've got your conference title games.
Listen, Halloween or earlier, you're you're ridiculous. Like, you can't do that. That's illegal.
Mhm.
But once November hits, it's sort of like game on at that point, right? You can start to dip in. I'm not saying you do the full regalia, right? You're not like, that's November 1st is probably too easy for the deer that, like, the animatronic deer that start eating grass in your yard. That's probably too early for that.
I want to.
That's probably too early for that.
Now is the time, though, as we transition Husker football here in a second. This is the time if you have one of those 10-foot skeletons, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
In your front yard. If you were to put a Santa hat on one now, I'd forgive you. Like, that's the time of year we're at.
Is that what Nebraska's trying to do to the offense?
Put a Santa hat on at this point in the year? I like that.
We know it's still dead. We know it's still dead.
I mean, there is so much to choose into. Between Kranak talking about acceptance and Elijah talking about dead, skeletons and Santa hats. I mean, it just screams offense, doesn't it?
It does. My God. What a sideshow. This is November for you, though. This is November as a Husker fan.
It's going to be uncomfortable, and you hope that it ends up being all okay. And it is, what's been the hardest thing is to just watch the futility. And you're sick for the kids, you're sick for the coaches, you're sick for the fan base, and
for the kids like of America kind of thing.
No, I'm sick
for the kids of Nebraska.
I'm sick for the players. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm sick for the kids of Nebraska too, though. Just the kids.
I'm saying,
they get forced into this crap all the time. Like, and all they want to do is see a couple touchdowns. That's all. Can you give the children? How does the little man handle UCLA ball games? Like, where it's a slog. I know sometimes I'm negative Mark on here, but generally up in the stands I'm positive Mark. Like, generally, you're clapping. Come on, Big Red. Yeah, I'm like, Tanner. We need you now. We need to be loud because the defense needs you now, right? And so. Keeping it up, but he calls it. He calls it. He knows once the tide turns, he detects it. He's experienced it. It's imprinted on him, right? Like it's so like, when you grow up, whatever you kind of like, he's developed the neural pathways to just know, right? Just kind of like you did, you developed the neural pathways as a youth. You knew you were going to be a broadcaster, probably something. Or whatever your skills were, right? You kind of develop those things between age 4 and 7. This is your psychology lesson for today. Right? Isn't it? Something like that? Like, when you're young, you get imprinted on it. So he's already developed those. They are finely tuned. He knows exactly when it's over. And I'm usually trying to tell him, like, no, hey, a lot of game left. A lot of game left. Fourth quarter. Yeah. Plenty of time to come back. It's not going to be like that. And he's just like, and he's just looking at me incredulous, just like, no, it's happening again, and like, he knows. And so and he really does. He calls it every time. And you can understand why. What's Nebraska's record in November? I should maybe know all these 3-19. Oh my God.
They haven't won
going back to 2019.
So they haven't won a home November game since 2020. The last time they did it with fans in the stands was 2018 Michigan State.
Okay. The Michigan State snow game, 9-6 field goal fest. You have the Penn State game in 2020 during COVID.
Didn't Will Levis come in at the end of that game and lead a near comeback?
That sounds Michigan right. State? No,
Penn State.
Penn State.
That was Will Levis, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
He was at Penn State, the Florida quarterback?
No, Levis.
Yeah, Will Levis was 14 of 31 for 219 yards in that game.
Yeah, remember, his legs, he kind of let him back in the second half, and then Ben Stilley drilled him down near the anyhow. So no one was at that game.
I was.
Same.
Wait, wasn't that a game that you weren't allowed to attend? Oh, okay, you're allowed to attend them in the press box. I got you.
Press box and cameraman.
I don't understand why they really needed us running the cameras for the big screen in the stadium. That was funny to me. Looking back now on 2020, we still ran the Husker Vision screens as normal, like full staff.
Rules for all the cutouts.
Were all the ads? Oh man, that would be,
well, it was like less game day experience. So there wasn't like, but we still did a tunnel walk. We still did all these things. We still did replays after plays, and it's like I don't know why we're doing all of this work, but it was still pretty much a normal. Like you didn't have the scoreboard updates down on the field and all the random like Huskers in the NFL. It was a bare bones broadcast, but it was still like very much a normal Husker Vision broadcast, aside from some of the things during the commercial breaks.
It's time for the FNBO kick for cash. Nobody walks out. Oh, failed again.
Can't refund it. We aired it. Let's get our starting 5 shout outs here going. 3-putt is in. Good to have you. Moonbot, good to have you, partner. Thanks for checking in. Rick is here. Rick says morning. Justin says, what's up? Good to have Justin checking in as we are rolling here. Tuck says, wow, UCLA has made a drastic improvement in just a few short weeks. How is that possible? UCLA looks big and physical and fast and just dynamite.
Well, they kind of, by the way, they are pretty big and fast.
Oh, they have got so many dudes, and if you didn't watch last night, they knocked off Iowa 20-17. They led at half. They
held Iowa to 80 rushing yards.
Oh, they were incredible. The defense
and they put up 200 plus themselves.
The defense looked incredible, and the game plan. Bieniemy was on fire, despite a red zone interception. Exactly, Walter. That's where I'm going.
Walter says coaching matters, or hashtag
fumble in the at the 2 that Iowa recovered. So there's 2 more touchdowns or 2 more field goals that UCLA didn't get because of red zone turnovers, and it ended up being 3-3. Sullivan looked pretty good until he got turnover happy and then got smoked and then I think benched. But no, Iowa looks much improved on offense. I know they were held to 17, but they moved the football.
Well, they were down to quarterback number 12 at that point, right? Like
right. Yeah. And the Sullivan looked like he was going to stab Ferentz in the neck on the sideline. They kept showing it because he either wasn't cleared or they weren't putting him back in. I was at a birthday party last night, so I just was watching. I didn't get to hear the
I think you're assuming those things just because he has a sleeve of tattoos.
Well, it good for Iowa getting a quarterback that has a tattoo sleeve. That's not on the old Iowa bingo card. Mike is in, but yeah, coaching matters, and you've seen Nebraska make some moves this week. It's been Dana, it's been Phil Snow, that's been the talk, that's been the buzz. Coaching absolutely does matter, and there's no more training wheels. And while it's noble to bring in guys you've coached with, guys that have been part of your staff, guys that can get things done from previous stops, Matt Rule is willing to do anything to get to a bowl game, and that means make some of his current guys uncomfortable, presumably in staff. And you just wonder. And listen, with Jake Peetz and Dana in January before this week, I mean, Matt Rule had, I don't want to say a hankering, but it looks like, there were other names out there that he looked at for quarterback coach and coordinator. And when those guys didn't end up coming to Lincoln initially, you just kind of settled, right? Sat's done it before. Sat can do it again. He'd come from South Carolina, and you fast forward now to 21 games into your tenure. I mean, it is reboot time for your offense, and you've done a lot of good things. You have gotten high-profile offensive linemen to continue to try and develop the Brickses of the world. You went out and got your 5-star quarterback, right? You got Ja'Cory Barney out of Miami. You have done about everything except on the field and score points, which is the most important thing. So you wonder if it can get fixed and flipped here in short order and in long-term discussion points. Now we bring in Brandon Vogel, counterread.com. Bogues, I was getting there. I am so sorry. I'll stop the diarrhea of the mouth, and I'm anxious to get your take here on a lot of things.
That's a pretty disgusting visual.
I'm just
trying to grapple with at this point.
Just the caliber of what, I mean, to me, what UCLA looks like right now. I'm wow. I think they go bowling. I don't know if they can keep it up, but they've looked great their last 3 weeks. And then Iowa looks drastically different and good and very functional, to at times scary on offense to pair with that defense. No shame in a 20-17 loss for Iowa, as well as UCLA's playing. But Nebraska just got it handed to them for a lot of the game last Saturday by UCLA. They end in Iowa City on Black Friday. But you look at these two teams last night, and then you look at just how Nebraska's looked, especially on offense. You had to make a move this week if you're Matt Rule, as far as bringing in people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if you had to, because I don't want to diminish the fact that I think Rule did do something, because let's be honest, like if we were here today and no move had been made, would be like, I mean, we might be saying this is unconscionable, but would we have been surprised that, you know, it was just kind of status quo? Because that's been Rule's, like, and I think that's his MO broadly. Like, he's pretty loyal. He believes in what he believes in. So the fact that he did bring in Dana Holgorsen and Phil Snow on the defensive side to have an outside look at things, I think is notable. So credit to him where it's due. You know, I wrote about it on Thursday at Counter Read. Like, I do think like Holgorsen, sort of him uniquely, maybe can have a little bit of an impact. That said, you know, we don't want to get out of control, of course, and I'm not saying anybody here is, with like thinking, you know, oh, this is going to change the offense night and day. I don't think that's realistic, and I don't think that's the aim. It's just like, hey, help us like just smooth out some of these wrinkles that we've been seeing. And if you do that, you know, Nebraska's moved the ball okay. It's just not translating into points often enough, and they move it a little bit too slowly. So that's kind of, I think, the starting point, at least for me, as far as what to expect with a Holgorsen consulted offense going forward for Nebraska.
Quickly, Brandon, before we dive too deeply into Holgorsen and Nebraska, we've hit it a decent amount this week. Walter chimes into the stream. He wants to remind us to not forget how horrible the special teams have been. He says that's a topic of conversation he doesn't want to get lost this week. Have you seen improvement there? Because as I look at the last 3 games, like, it's not special teams that lost any of those games for you, really.
No, but
which is an improvement.
You
right?
can't miss an extra point in a comeback attempt.
That's also true.
That's so funny. I know, and we're just so conditioned to it now that we just overlook things like that. So I understand a lot, because I'm agreeing with you, and then I'm like, oh yeah, they did have that ridiculous blunder that nobody ever commits, ever. You know,
no one's
Nebraska.
No one's
November.
as pissed.
Hey, don't forget
27. Oh, wait a minute.
The Ravens did it with Justin Tucker on Thursday Night Football. Let's not forget about that.
Well, he sucks. I mean, yeah.
He's missed 3 in his life.
Listen, hey, we have a little text string going. You know, I'm sure all of us do, right? Everybody's got a million text strings going during games, and we were trading some things last week after the debacle, and it's just like when you look at Nebraska's offense, and you think just quite literally, what does an offensive coordinator do? Like, coordinate the offense. Nebraska looks like Carlton dancing right now.
That's hilarious.
It is, you know, it is just quite literally uncoordinated, right? Personnel packages, getting people on and off the field, complementary plays, execution of said plays. It's just an uncoordinated mess. And it's easy to then just take that and just be like, well, that's the offensive coordinator. They're uncoordinated. He's got to go, right? It's easy to say that. And you don't wish it on him because it is usually more than just one thing. But the fit right now, like at this point in time, Nebraska's offense plus Satterfield, right? The whole operation, it's a complete mess. It doesn't mean Marcus Satterfield has no value. It doesn't mean he's not a good coach in plenty of ways, but he is not he is not yielding an offense that is coordinated, and it's proven at this point, right? There's like, what's Nebraska's great offensive game that they've had?
They've had a half.
They just
against Colorado.
They don't have one, and it's not, and you can't, like. I'm sorry, but I don't. You're at this point. You can't say, well, it's just recruiting, or it's no. You have enough dudes, you have enough talent to do way better than they've been doing. And you got to question. I go back to this too, Brandon. I'm curious what you think about this one, but the decision, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it seems like it is. When they were getting ready for the season, you heard Rule and Satterfield both say they didn't take anything out of the offense for Raiola. Raiola has such a capacity. He's such a brilliant kid. He processes information quickly. He's from what we've seen, it seems like it. But they're just like, no, full offense thrown right at him. Could that be part of what we're looking at here too, where maybe they've overwhelmed the kid a little bit, especially when he's going against the caliber of defenses he's going to face in the Big Ten?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I think when you look at Raiola's last 3 games, that's the word I would use is overwhelmed, which we all kind of, I think expected at times this season for a true freshman, even a very talented one. To see him come back to back, though, I think ups the concern level there. As it pertains to Satterfield, like if we were to try to ultra simplify, like what does an offensive coordinator do? Like I think, well, broadly you have to come up with, okay, this is what we do and why we do it. And then you script, you game plan pregame, and then you got to respond. And I don't know that any of those facets of that, if we accept that as a brief job description, have been above average for Nebraska at this point. Things like, well, to take it back to Raiola and being overwhelmed, like Satterfield, he's been around football. Like he knows kind of the basic answers to what you are seeing in a game. And a lot of times some of those things are there. The pick 6 to start the second half last week. If that ball goes where it should, it's probably a big gain. There was another play, I'm forgetting, I think it was in the first half, where it was kind of a shallow cross, a standard thing that all teams run. And this happened against Indiana too, where like the immediate like option A, if this thing happens, was open twice. And from a coordinator perspective, like what do you do if the ball just doesn't go there? And it's a coach's job to make sure that it does. But that's where I think we're seeing kind of the squeaky wheel, I guess. Sometimes the play calling's not great. Matt Rule bringing up one of the answers to UCLA's pressure is screens, but they were gone after seeing a boatload of them. Like, how do you explain that away? Like, was us talking on a Saturday radio show like part of the reason they didn't run screens? I mean, seriously. So
they'd run a bunch. Well, they'd run a bunch the whole year, and that was a huge talking point among fans and among media. And then all of a sudden they disappeared. It's like you hope they're not responding to.
Well, they also
talk.
They also threw a pick against Maryland, and then their 2-minute drill was a nightmare the following week in overtime against Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. They were afraid to throw in the red zone a year ago. I mean, it was two different mentalities with how they were trying to go win a ball game. Were you afraid to lose or scared to win?
They played tentatively. Point blank, that's not a team on the attack. They don't appear very confident.
Yeah.
They're not very competent. Not effective. Like, would you be confident if you were on that offense?
No, it's tough too, because I think, and that kind of goes back to the multifaceted problem part of it, of like, okay, maybe sometimes you get a strange play call. If and even if you're looking at this from a player's perspective, you get it. And then sometimes you get the right play call, but that the wide receiver doesn't get the block and it goes for 2 yards. Or sometimes the quarterback misses a guy. And like all of those things kind of combine, I think it would be hard to have a ton of confidence. Like you need a base level, I think, of execution from everybody of like, hey, all of these plays aren't going to go for 15 plus yards, but if we all just like do it at a slightly above average level, like we're gonna move the football. And I guess when you look at what Nebraska has, you could argue maybe that's how they do it, because every drive seems to take at least 8 plays, which is part of the problem. That's too long. But yeah, I would agree. It does not strike me as a confident bunch. And we'll see how they come out of bye week with at least a new set of eyes in the room.
It's Brandon Vogel with us from Counter Read. Mark Cranack, Elijah Herbal, Chris Schmidt. Great to be with you on the weekend edition of Hail Varsity. Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe. Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed and follow that at HVarsity Radio. KFOR, Facebook, and Twitter. Quick shout-outs to Mr. Snitley. Good to have you. Dion in, Charles in, Brian in. So many more of you as well checking in. Rule the Day is here. Good to have all of you and your comments. We really appreciate you doing that, helping the show in the morning and throughout the week. And the coaching part is very real. And you have this UCLA and Iowa example. And one of the streamers said that Iowa was down to their 4th-string quarterback last night who played linebacker, but they were still trying to give it the old college try. And Nebraska, by bringing in the eyes of a Phil Snow, who I learned that was the dreaded defensive coordinator of that Arizona State team that shut out Nebraska 19-0 back in 96. I was like, damn, I was at that game. Yeah. And then Dana, Dana's just been really good wherever he's been. And Dana's also a guy that, Dolman was talking about this with us, Bill Dolman, where maybe Dana's to the point where he's kind of in that Chip Kelly mode of just let me call ball. Don't make me babysit. Don't make me fundraise. And I don't know, but there are some guys that just want to call ball, make plays. We had just a fun chat, Elijah, yesterday with Hal Mummy, the father of Air Raid, the guy who brought in Leach, the guy who.
By the way, how old is Hal Mummy? He sounded young and spry.
He's 72. He's kicking it down in San Antonio. Looked great. Looked tan.
Sounded like he was in his 40s. He just sounded. I just listened to that interview, and I'm just like, man, I just expected him to sound like an elderly man, but he did not.
Oh, he looks and sounds great. Hal's a good dude. Coach Mummy's fun, but he just kind of laid out like, Dana's a good time, and he has good time offenses, but he's pretty demanding in a good way, and I think the personality that can rub off, Vogues, on an offense from a confidence standpoint, let alone a points potential.
Yeah, I think it has that potential. We'll see, and who knows? I'm not an FBS football coach, but I kind of laid it out as like, I think when you engage in what Nebraska decided to do this week, like these guys come in and it's kind of like, okay, what problems are you seeing? Like, okay, on the flight in, I watched as many of the games as I could or whatever it took. And like, let's just talk through it. And here's something I think is worth trying. And, you get a couple of those things. You kind of dial down to just hearing somebody else say who's coached the game. Like, here's what you guys do well. Here's what would scare me if I'm playing you. It's just a perspective that's really hard to have inside the program. So, I think it should be pretty simple. I'm sure it was a long work week for the coaching staff and the football staff as a whole. And that's before you even include recruiting. But hopefully it'll be productive. I think defensively, it was interesting to me. They brought in Snow as well. Certainly doesn't hurt. I think defensively they're pretty fine for the most part. Like, it's just they've been held to kind of a unreasonable standard of hey, if we give up more than 3 scores, we're probably sunk. So
is that just wild for you?
But I can't get over it too. Until Nebraska wins a game 35-31, then I finally might be like, oh, okay, maybe there's actually some progress because hey, maybe somebody just had a better plan than you on offense.
It's gonna happen with these staffs you're going against.
Yeah.
Well, how about the anomaly too? And it happened a little bit last year, but especially this year. I'm struggling to figure out why opposing quarterbacks have their season best numbers back to back. It seems like
it's a thing.
Yeah, and that was
clear this week, Mark. In the last 3 weeks, Indiana, Ohio State, UCLA. Those 3 weeks, the opponent passer rating for the teams Nebraska was playing was the highest in the country in those 3 weeks.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's just everything works, right? And these guys are connecting on 80% of their throws. They're just throwing dimes left and right, can do no wrong. They're even Garber's long scramble that ended up 57 yards, I think showcased a little bit of, I don't want to say lack of effort on the defensive side of the ball, but there wasn't that attacking. It seemed like that run occurred because folks were waiting for somebody else to make the play.
Yeah.
There's if you watch early in that run, just that guy could have made the tackle, but he was sort of waiting for other people to do it. It's peculiar. It's peculiar how, and it is that benefit of the doubt. Is that just maybe a result of each of those teams having a bye week leading in to where they were able to, put together a more sophisticated and effective plan?
It's absolutely it, don't you think? I mean, they plan a special, and they have more time to do it.
But Nebraska, being as uncoordinated as they are, cannot do the same.
Well, fair point. I mean, I think the bye week's definitely part of it, although I don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head, but I'm guessing Luke Altmaier probably had one of his best days of the season too, which wasn't coming off of a bye week, if I remember correctly. Anyway, I'm struggling to remember. I think part of it with Indiana and Ohio State, Will Howard and Curtis Rourke are, obviously he didn't play the second half, though it didn't really matter at that point, are good veteran quarterbacks. That's a piece of it.
Yeah.
I think Ethan Garbers has been better than he's gotten credit for. But one of the things with UCLA, Nebraska played a lot of man against UCLA in the first half and switched to zone in the second. And it made a pretty big difference. And zone is would be what I would consider kind of their base look in the secondary. And we've seen them do that at times. It's kind of a game plan specific thing. But I would say that man coverage has not been their strength this year. And to UCLA's credit, and this is where the bye week piece of it I think comes in, seemed to come in ready for that. And that's part of coordinating an offense too. Is if we get in these certain looks, this is their response, and this is how we exploit that. And they were really, really well coordinated coming into that game. With this UCLA team, Eric Bieniemy, I think, has done a really good job, especially basically from October on, of having an offense that complements what's a pretty good defense, certainly very good against the run. Mark mentioned what they did against Iowa. I mean, even Nebraska outrushed Iowa against UCLA. It only had 113 yards. So it's, I don't know. UCLA is an interesting one. They've come on really strong. Rule said they're a team that's always pretty. Has a high level of kind of base athleticism. And a month ago, no one would have been no, Deshaun Foster's doing an amazing job there. But here we are. I think things can change quickly.
And one of the things I was talking about with Schmitty off the air yesterday was the fact that this past week, we spent Monday talking about the UCLA loss. That was kind of a therapy reaction Monday. Then you get to Tuesday, the Holgorsen and Phil Snow news comes out. That's what you're talking about. To Matt Rule's credit, like, he absolutely shifted the narrative this week from, like, man, that's a bad loss, to, oh, Dana Holgorsen and Phil Snow are coming in to fix everything. Like, that's a part of that, in my eyes, is a PR move to be like, let's take some pressure off of that. But now that you see what UCLA did against Iowa, does it change your perspective on that UCLA loss? Because I'm seeing we have a comment in here, UCLA has better talent than Nebraska. I think if you get back to earlier in the week, that's a bit of a hot take, but now we see what they do against Iowa.
It's an absolutely correct take.
Yeah, because with the added perspective of what they did last night, you go, oh, they do have more talent than Nebraska. They just got beat up on by some really, really good teams early in the season, and it took them some time to hit their stride. How much has your perspective changed over the past 7 days?
A bit. I saw a commenter earlier say, essentially UCLA beating Iowa was making Nebraska fans feel better about it. And I think you do have to be careful with that. That was a paraphrase, of course. But to some degree, like, I think there is something to that. And, when you look at Nebraska, Mark asked earlier, what's the great offensive performance from Nebraska? And other than UTEP, or I guess 21 offensive points against Colorado, certainly would be in contention. Nebraska's success rate in the second half against UCLA was their second best of the season. Like, it's right there with UTEP in terms of moving the ball. Now, it's easy to kind of overlook that for a lot of reasons. One, it started with pick six. Two, you couldn't finish that last red zone opportunity that you needed to tie the game, and you lost. So like, to a certain degree, I'm with you. Who cares? But the fact is like, the offense, after maybe one of its worst halves of the season, did come back and had some answers. It's just, you can't, when your margins are this thin, you can't get kind of out chess matched on the, in terms of the defense, as we were talking about earlier, with Bieniemy's kind of playing early on, and then try to play. You can't wait till halftime to be able to adjust those things and make the change, particularly in Big Ten play. You might be able to get away with it sometimes in non-conference play, but not against the Big Ten, particularly this Big Ten.
Yeah.
Two teams, I think, that could have a good November and shake up some of the standings, because the Big Ten it's going to be fascinating to see who rises and who falls. Washington is dangerous enough to win or lose. They host UCLA next, but instant reaction, I'm buying stock in UCLA just because they've got a couple of dudes on every level of their defense. The kid from Inglewood, 93, is just fun to watch. He's a bowling ball that is fast, at least in short spaces. The linebacker that got the penalty flag is a beast. He had 4 TFLs last night. Garbers can fling it. I love the play call. I love the run game commitment. It's kind of been rejuvenated, and it looks like I'm watching the Chiefs a little bit. And they, 20 points isn't a ton, but it was enough. They moved the football. So kind of buying stock in UCLA. Minnesota has been surging. Illinois is fading a bit. Wisconsin, Michigan, big ball game for Michigan today against Indiana. Like, do they end up at 5-5 week 2 in November and get drilled, or do they bounce back? Because they had Oregon last week and they got smoked at home and the place emptied out. And what's Nebraska turn out to be? Do they at least stalemate November? And go 2-2? Do they get that one elusive win? Do they lose out? There's still a lot of time. Rutgers is absolutely faded. SC's a mess. Michigan State is in year 1. And then Iowa, I know they took it on the chin last night, but they still look way better than they have in a lot of years on offense. Penn State, they got to go to Minnesota. That could be dangerous. And then what happens with Ohio State and Indiana? So I'm pretty fascinated. Right now, Nebraska's not even in that middle class level of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning, actually. I was like, where's Nebraska going to end up? Like, we would get to the end of the year and, like, not just the standings, but, like, you try to do some sort of, like, pure power ranking. Like, where's Nebraska going to fall in that? At this point, I have no idea. Like, I do think they'll get the one win they need to at least salvage the postseason out of kind of this, current swoon that they've experienced. But the Big Ten overall, it's pretty fascinating. I agree with you on Minnesota, though. I do think they might be.
They're limited.
Yeah, but more specifically, it wouldn't surprise me if they got a little Shiano special today. I don't know if they lose outright, but like if they win that one, pretty handily, Minnesota is definitely, I think, then at that point in the Big Ten's quote unquote middle class, which
they dreaded
their preseason win total. Their preseason win total is 4.5. So,
he's doing a hell of a job, and he's not likable by many Nebraska fans. But I mean, can they go survive after feeling good about themselves with the Illinois win? And then if they win today against Rutgers, that is a dangerous game for them. Rutgers got to snap out of it. Penn State could be walking into a snake pit, man.
Well, and I will say here really fast as we talk about Minnesota, I'm not worried about a home field advantage. If anyone out there is listening in Piscataway, New Jersey, you can get tickets to this game for $4.
That's hilarious.
Finding a whole bunch of $4 tickets listed online. So if anyone's out in that New York area and wants something to do today, so
I'm going to pay 2 times more to get a beer at the game than go to.
I know. Listen, here's the other thing, guys. When you get to this point, and when the struggles are so severe, you start to look at everything. And another popular discussion has been the makeup of Rhule's coaching staff. And his decision, much like Frost, to bring in guys who don't necessarily have the accolades to warrant their high salaries and potentially the position. And you don't worry about it. If everything's going well, it's not even a talking point, right? But when it's not going well, you start to look and you say, okay, what were the accolades that Satterfield had to make him qualified to run an offense in the Big Ten, right? And then you look at wide receiver coach, like the guy's 24. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a good coach some other time. And you look across the board, really, it's 2 coaches that you could look at and say have the qualifications, the experience, and that would be Tony White and John Butler, right? Maybe Glenn Foley, too. You could probably put Glenn Foley in that category, but you've seen what special teams has done.
And one of your young hires in Dvorak has produced pretty good linebacker play, or at least developed. Like, he's one of the young guys that he's brought on and he's trying to nurture.
Yeah,
that I think's done a pretty good job. But you're not wrong, Mark. I mean, you are outgunned across the sideline in the Big Ten on a lot of Saturdays anyway, let alone with what you start with staff wise and the results you're getting. I mean, you're taking a knife to a gunfight.
I mean, yeah. How much of that, Brandon? Is it different at Nebraska from what you've seen? Like, do most Big Ten staffs? You're always going to have buddy hires on every staff. Like, that's just part of it. Yeah, but is there a pretty marked difference in Nebraska's makeup of coaches compared to a lot of their competition in the Big Ten?
I don't know if I know all of them well enough off the top of my head to say for sure. I mean, I would imagine this has to be probably one of the toughest things to do as a head coach at a place like a Nebraska. Well, any Big Ten school. It's like, do you go with familiarity, or do you go out there and, poke around with something that has more kind of immediate market value, which, we've seen like a lot of guys become kind of hot assistants, hot coordinators, and move up a level, and it turns out, it's not quite the same. Now, sometimes it does work out. I think of Indiana. I mean, Indiana brought that's Cignetti's staff. Like it's kind of for the most part, like he brought those guys with him, and it has worked there. But I do think there's something to looking at kind of the current makeup of it. Like if we were to ask, who's Nebraska going to have to fight to keep this offseason? I think there's only one absolute answer, and that's still Tony White. Number 2 on that list for me might be Dvorak. I could see him getting some interest. It's a little bit different with the NFL guys in terms of Butler and Thomas. You know, I think that kind of doesn't translate as much for guys who are, you know, rising up the college ranks necessarily. So I think there's something to that when you just look at it and be like, how many of these guys would be in demand? And it's not a big group, at least in my estimation.
It's well put. Vogues, tell us about Counter Read. How can folks get signed up, the work you're doing?
Yeah, head over to counterread.com. You can check out the newsletters we do each week. There's 2 exclusive ones for subscribers, which included kind of my discussion and thoughts on the Holgorsen edition this week. Put up a story on men's basketball today. Got to women's basketball earlier in the week. Aaron Swanson handled both of those for us. So plenty to talk about, and we'll be back on Monday with the next newsletter, kind of previewing this USC game. I don't know if you guys saw the early line out there on that, but -9.
Yeah, it's up to 9 now. All right.
Yeah, there's predicting like a 30-21-ish win. Over under is like 51.5.
21 points, huh?
Right. I know. I'm just like, that's
what's
a lot of points.
Holgorsen effect.
Are you going Bronco? Bears.
Bears.
No, that's
Bears.
Bears. It's
Okay.
my Clark Griswold hat.
I love it. That's those hats are the best. Those were Kranek. You had some of those. Sharpie, you had some of those growing up, didn't you?
I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Schmitty's ability
Yeah,
to-
this is original one owner, like 1994 vintage. I've had this hat for a long time.
No, I know. But Grandpa used to have the corduroy ones. You know, the
Corduroy ones are nice.
The corduroy ones were tight,
Oh yeah, those are good.
especially in the summertime. You just sweat your ass off. Yeah.
Yeah, you get the nice little salt sweat marks on the front part.
Yeah.
That's when you knew.
Vogues, appreciate you, man. Thank you much.
Thanks, guys.
There he is, Brandon Vogel. The Iron Horse is with us. Sharpie, how we doing?
Good morning. How you guys doing?
We're all right.
Great, Gary. It's
Interesting
awesome.
week. Interesting week, dude. Don't you think?
It has been an interesting week. I didn't like what Matt Rule did on Monday.
At all?
Nope.
Okay,
What?
talk to me.
I like what he did on Tuesday, because here, let's go back to Monday. And you know, I mean, when around here, when you lose one game, it's a big deal. When you lose 2 games, it's a bigger deal. When you lose 3 games in a row, you know, people start to go, So last Saturday was the first time that I think any doubt about the future of Matt Rule at Nebraska being able to turn the corner got brought up, because you lose a game like that with what is on the line and the way you played, and you really didn't do anything right. You know, people wonder that. And then he comes in on Monday, and I thought he was all over the place. And I think he did something that I really wasn't thinking about, but then I had to go, is there a problem within the walls of Nebraska football? Because he was almost talking like he was panicking. And I'm like, I never sensed that. I just sensed a football team that was going through it, that had lost 3 in a row. So then I'm going, what's going on here? Because we're talking about won't chase players on my own roster, talking about meeting with parents, bringing in outside influences. And I'm like, wow, what is going on? So I didn't like that, because I didn't sense that. But now I got to wonder, wow, is there a disconnect all over the place? And the trust is really, really shaky right now. And then I like what he did on Tuesday, because there is a sense of urgency. Granted, it's year 2, and he's supposed to pop in year 3. And Nebraska may not just be a very good football team, and we might have to deal with that reality. But he's not standing pat for next year. I don't know how much of an impact you make in 3 games. Now, I think there will be some impact, but not a gigantic impact, because you still got the same players here, which the day before you talked about they got to execute, and I was with him on that. Players got to execute. It's been a very interesting bye week around here, where now Nebraska just needs to win 1 football game. just get bowl eligible. I don't care how you do it, who you do it against. You got to get one victory to become bowl eligible, and then we can start from there and then have a bigger discussion about where Nebraska football is in 2024.
You know, Sharpie, the reality is it's getting heavy and it's getting real because he didn't expect to be in this situation, losing 3 straight. He has brought in Dana. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I mean, I am fully expecting, and this is speculation, that between this week and when they go wheels up to La La Land, that there's going to be renewed confidence in the offense inside those walls. You're going to have a bona fide play caller who's got a great in-game feel and a bona fide game designer now on staff. And they go back enough years that the push comes to shove, it's not going to be any skin off Dana's back to step in and help this offense beyond his voice. I'm glad that there's that option the rest of November for Nebraska because it needs to be fixed. Yeah, I'm expecting it. I'm expecting it to be fixed to the tune of at least one more win, and they look and play better at least.
They're going to get one more win. I am confident of that. They will get to a bowl game. I'm wondering in this next game, can Nebraska match the desperation of USC?
They're talking 2 desperates, bro.
Well, I mean, we're talking 2 teams that are combined 9-9, which we didn't think we'd be in this spot. But you know, USC's got their own issues. Nebraska's got to take care of themselves. I do believe Nebraska gets bowl eligible, but USC needs to win 2 of their last 3. They just made a big change. They may have kicked their starting quarterback into the portal to go with a different quarterback that I actually think is a worse matchup for Nebraska because of what he does with his legs. We're going to have to talk about next week the RPO. But is USC going to be desperate, and can Nebraska play desperate? Because the football coach told you that we've got a sense of urgency now. The fans have a sense of urgency because we don't want to hear about the process anymore. That's over. Stop sermonizing. We don't need that stuff. It's all about what happens on the field. So the coach on Tuesday said, damn right. We got a sense of urgency because we got to start winning some football games. Okay, because that's what matters right now. And so I don't know if that's a sense of urgency or desperation. I think it's more of a, guys, no more effing around. Okay? You know what? You're better than this, and you can't ride the roller coaster. So it's going to be a really interesting, the dynamics colliding next Saturday at 3 o'clock in the Coliseum of where both of these teams are in 24. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, this is where their programs are. I'm talking about reaching game number 10 of the 24 season of where are you at? What is Nebraska? Because I still ask that question, and we should be doing that after 9 games is what is Nebraska? And we're doing the same thing about USC, but they also have the caveat of, I think USC's got some pretty good talent. They just can't win close games. And in the fourth quarter, they look like they're the invisible man.
It's Gary Sharp with this here, weekend edition, Hail Varsity. Apologies, Mark. I had your mic muted. What did you say there, bud?
I said, yeah, just like Nebraska, right?
Well, I want to bring up a comment that Dion made here in the stream saying, like, with these coaching changes, it feels like Rhule's starting over after year 2. You get that feel? I've made the comparison this week on the show to what happened with Fred Hoiberg and the Husker basketball team after his second year, where a lot of retooling was done. Changed some staff, changed how he recruited, changed the type of guys he was going after, kind of changed how he thought his offense was going to fit within the Big Ten, made some stylistic changes there. And you see the results that have happened. It feels like Fred Hoiberg's onto something with the Husker basketball squad. Does it feel like a similar time for Matt Rhule where it's retooling time for the rebuild? Like you've learned what works and what doesn't work in the Big Ten, and now it's time to make the adjustments that allow you to be a winner. Am I off the base there?
No.
What's your take on what this end to year 2 is?
I like where you're going there because that was a big change with Fred. Now, Fred was kind of pushed that way, but Fred had to take the lead to redesign his coaching staff and kind of his mindset of how to win the Big Ten. I think it's okay. You know what? Everybody gets one get out of jail free card. And you guys were just talking about it, how you assemble a staff when you start. And you like a lot of familiarity because you got to hit the ground running. look at the side of the ball where you probably have the best coaches, an area where maybe Rule doesn't have the most connections. He definitely did not have the most intimate connection with Tony, even though he knew him. But you have to look in the mirror and you have to say, in this conference, the coordinators are good, the head coaches are good, but damn, the position coaches are good as well. How does our coaching staff match up? Do they have the tools to be successful? Here's the problem I think that Rule has run into. And I'm okay with him looking at his staff and moving chairs around, is Nebraska wants to be a developmental program. And I'm glad that they finally said that out loud, because I've been beating that drum for years that Nebraska is a developmental program. But guys, if you're going to be a developmental program, you can't have a developmental coaching staff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It 100%. And I want to hear.
But Elijah, I love that comparison, because I think you're onto something there.
I want to hear how you come out on the talent discussion. I for one dismiss it, because listen, there's talent, right? Just the raw material, the 40 time, the height, the weight, the explosiveness, all that, the athleticism. There's that discussion. But then it's making sure that those athletes are supremely confident in what they're doing and believe in what you're trying to do on offense, right? And that you make it very easy for them so that they can go out and play. And I don't think there was any better contrast that we've seen this year than Indiana, which Kurt Cignetti is doing that at an elite level. When you're watching Indiana, do you sense any discord? Do you sense any doubt? Do you sense any lack of confidence in what they're calling or doing? No, those guys are going.
They're flying.
They believe in what they're doing, and they're going full tilt. You compare that, but they don't have better raw material than Nebraska. They don't have, this insane. It's not a bunch of Des Bryants out on the edge, right? They don't have Barry Sanders in the backfield. That isn't Tom Brady at quarterback. They're not more talented than Nebraska is. Nebraska's offense, they just look like they don't either understand what they're doing or believe in what they're doing.
No, I think the B word
is a mess.
I think the B word is the thing. I think the players don't believe in the system that they're being asked to run and the sequence of plays. And I don't think the current offensive coordinator believes in his play sheet.
Yeah, and I don't think they because I think they over
talent. Yeah, the talent on offense. The talent on offense is still probably middle of the Big Ten, but they are better than what they're showing.
Yeah,
but it's also guys got to do their job, man. There are some guys that are not playing well, and it's little things. It's not major things. Like I think there's some guys on defense that are getting exposed because there's games on film. I think on offense, hell, you don't even know what they're trying to do. No. But then when guys don't do their job, they have to. Nebraska's offense is so hard because 11 guys basically have to do the right thing on every play for Nebraska to have an explosive play. That can't be happening.
Yeah, and the personnel groupings, even on rotation at running back, and you can just go on and on. But we've been calling this stuff for
this isn't new.
Now.
Like all four of us, we've been talking about this. But then when you play a team against UCLA, a team like UCLA, it gets magnified a little bit more. I mean, I think the talent across the board. Nebraska has a lot of guys that probably are not frontline guys yet. They're a little, and they have Nebraska is chock full of some good culture locker room guys that when you play teams that watch film and go with they pick on mismatches and they expose you, then you get in trouble. And that's where part of the offseason for Rule is it's okay to have an exodus and not say, oh, the culture is bad. People want to win football games. Guys that are in the program want to win football games. If you don't believe that there are guys on your roster that can help you win football games, but your culture is strong, which I firmly believe, then it's okay to move some guys out and move some younger guys in. because Nebraska will look a little different next year on defense, for example. They're going to be faster on defense. They won't be as experienced, but I think they'll be faster. That's why I think part of this whole discussion, I heard you guys earlier and Schmitty and Elijah all week long, is this is a 3-week display for the rest of college football for kids that are high school kids that are still thinking about Nebraska or our portal guys, for Nebraska to go, it's all right, we're cool, look what we're doing. Because once the season is over, you got to process your roster, you got to get guys on your roster, you got to maybe flip some guys in high school, but you have to make it appealing. You know, adding Dana Holgorsen, people know who Dana's name is. They can Google him and they can see everything he does offensively. You got to make Dylan Raiola in the last 3 weeks look like he's having fun, like he's wheeling and dealing. So I can go to a guy in the portal and say, man, you're a dude at wide receiver. What's it going to take? $500K? Let's get you here to play with this guy in a new offense? Come on now, bro. Or if Dylan is still hanging on the freshman wall, man, that's kind of a tough sell. So it's a big 3 weeks. I know people are like, I'm done after UCLA. Screw you.
Perfect.
Yeah, screw UCLA. I'm done. Guys, we're not done. These next 3 weeks are pretty damn important for Nebraska football to finish this year and for what happens in 25, because if you have a clunky finish to this season, and God forbid you don't make a bowl game, man, it's tough to walk around in Benkelman, Nebraska, and Kearney and Omaha and sell Nebraska football. If you don't have a good 3 weeks, regardless if you have a new OC who likes Red Bulls and once in 2011 got booted from a casino.
Can we?
But just not once.
Yeah. Can we? No.
We haven't brought that up all week long.
No, we have not.
Yeah, Holgorsen.
We didn't ask Hal about that yesterday. What's Dana in the casino business like?
Well, is it ironic that right there in your lovely city of Lincoln, that Warhorse Casino this week expanded what they are able to offer?
You're telling me table games in Dana?
Was that the sticking point last offseason? He's like, oh, your casinos that have table games?
Hold on. I could go into Come and Go and play slots. Perfect.
You mean not just Casey's?
Jeez. Now, kind of lost in all this, though, going into USC. And we don't know intimately how much on-field coaching Dana's doing, how much how much he's addressing the players or just shifting the entire operation or what. Like, we don't really have intimate knowledge of that yet. But lost in all this, Dylan Raiola's not going to practice this week. He got dinged up pretty bad. And so if you're relying on kind of getting him ready and helping him, he's not even practicing right now. And he's going to be day to day next week. So how much of an impact can Holgorsen or any shift in the operation, how much can you really do that when your quarterback can't even practice or take snaps?
You can game plan something to work with what you got.
But I think regardless of who the quarterback is against USC, and I still think it'll be Dylan, I think there will be – so I think Holgorsen, you don't bring in Dana Holgorsen and tell him to go sit in the corner and take notes and then come meet with the head coach after a meeting and let's talk about guys. You bring him in to sit there and look at film and then say, hey, what if we try this? There are a couple of things initially that I think will look different with Holgorsen's influence. And I don't know if he'll wear a headset, but he has, when he's been in this role, he's been on the sidelines. But I don't think he's had a headset. So he'll be involved. Here's two things. One, I think three things. Design of running plays may look a little bit different with a new wrinkle.
Oh, no.
Also, looking at red zone efficiency, Dana has always been great in the red zone. And then I think another thing that probably will happen quicker, and it's kind of a pun, is I think Nebraska's quick game. Nebraska will try and run quick game in passing, which would benefit Dylan Raiola enormously. And I'm not talking screens. I'm talking just quick game. 3-step drop, get the ball out. That's something that I think Holgorsen, if I look at his past history with quarterbacks and a guy that maybe is struggling a little bit, boy, that's a great safety valve. Boom, 3-step drop, get it out, get guys in space and let them go make a play. I mean, Ja'Cory Barney, because you guys are thinking too, somebody's going to be calling Ja'Cory Barney.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if Dana looks at Jacory and goes, dude, I can make you a star. Here you got 3 weeks and a quick game. Barney in space, just boom, snap, boom, out. Jacory, go make a play. You don't need blockers. We're gonna do a chess match where we've got the matchups for you. I think those are 3 things I think you'll see right away, regardless of quarterback. But I still think it'll be Dillon next week on offense.
Two things here quickly is first, maybe I'm stretching this a little bit, but I look at Jacory Barney and I look at what Dana Holgorsen did for Tavon Austin at West Virginia, and I say, you have a guy that you've worked with.
Shake hands.
Yeah.
I mean, not to mention you also have a guy at Houston and Tank Dell that I think also a similar player. Like Dana Holgorsen loves having that little small shifty wide receiver to work with in his offense. I think that's interesting. But the question I want to ask you is with Dylan Raiola holding the football, trying to get some quick game going, do you think what we saw last week against UCLA was coaching or execution with the lack of a quick game? Do you think it's a guy holding onto the football too long because he's not reading the defense well and he's lacking confidence? Or do you think it's a game planning thing where Nebraska wasn't trying to get the ball out of his hands quickly? What's your take on that? Because, I mean, people in the 90th row in South Stadium were screaming for him to get the ball out quicker.
Execution.
Okay.
I thought they had a good game plan last week. I think they have you know, when you're trying to game plan with a running back who doesn't see the right hole, or you have a quarterback that holds the ball and is a deer in the headlights and is so afraid to make a turnover, I thought their approach on offense with what they wanted to do was pretty good. I just think, man, they didn't execute. You know what? They probably sat in the locker room at halftime and designed up that Fedoni play, and we're like, this is going for a touchdown. We've seen it a couple of times. Fedoni's going to go for a touchdown. Now, you may have to time him with a sundial, but he's going to get to the end zone. And then look what happens. You know, it's just off. Things are off by like a half second with this offense. And then it falls on everybody's plate that they are stuck. The fact that you can't score just blows me away. I mean, just the stat that is developing in Rhule's first 2 years that is really unfathomable is that Nebraska has not won a game when the defense has given up more than 14 to a Power 4 team. How in the hell does that happen? But you know what? There was no prior history of Marcus Satterfield where you went, boy, he's going to walk into the Big Ten and he's going to be wheeling and dealing and we're going to be fine. That's where I had a problem. And it's okay to go, OC isn't the right guy, because there's no benefit of the doubt that, hey, man, they're not executing, so they're going to get this turned around because Satterfield's got X, Y, and Z past history. Nah, we're good.
The benefit of the doubt right now with Nebraska fans, it's not that Rhule is incompetent, or it's not that Rhule's a bad coach. You've got an accumulation, fellas, of year after year after year before he got here of just shaky football. And folks and their patience level right now, even though it's only year 2, they want to win now. You've recruited, you've done everything except on Saturdays on the field, man. And see if it can get flipped around. And I want to ask you real quick about just the initial staff. We've talked a lot about culture, and you're right, Sharpie. There's a lot of good culture in that football program, and you need that to turn into wins. And we talk about maybe some of the buddy hires or familiar hires for your staff. Those guys help implement your culture. But did you end up settling with, all right, here's some guys on the offensive side of the ball that I'm going to have on my staff. You're now in year 2. You're now in game 22, and it's been sputtering. Did you settle because this guy will be good, he'll be loyal to me, and we'll just fight the good fight all together versus let's just go get the best guy out there like a Dana to match wits with with Phil Parker at some point?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. If you look at, again, I'm going to stick with this line, is if you want to be a developmental program, you can't have guys on your staff that are developmental coaches. Yeah. But isn't it interesting, 2 of the most recent off-the-field hires who we all expect, barring a great job offer in the offseason, I mean, Mosey is going to be a full-time on-field guy next year. mean, is he going to coach running backs? Is he going to coach wide receivers? Dana, unless there is a head coaching offer that comes his way, if they can agree on some things, he's probably going to be your OC. Those are two off-the-field guys you have hired since the season began. So here's my thing with Rule. Rule to me, and he's not new in this, Rule is a defensive guy that has to talk about offense. Okay? So Rule knows defense. I don't think he knows offense is not his strength. So when offense goes south, you listen to him talk, he doesn't necessarily have the answers. Okay?
No, he does not.
So, but that's a defensive guy, and that's not new to Nebraska. That's across the country with a head coach that's his strength. Here's the thing with Rule that I think moving forward is important. I think Rule is a good program builder. I think Rule is a guy that can make right decisions for a program. I don't necessarily think on Saturdays Rule is the guy that is going to give you 4 or 5 points extra in a game. So he needs to surround himself with people that are exceptional X's and O's people. You get one get out of jail card. I think it's going to happen now, and that's fine because then you know what you have. You've gone through 2 years of the Big Ten. Now you can move forward, but you also got to get dudes to match to get to where you want to be.
I say this for Rule 2 this week is, for maybe as odd as his press conference was on Monday, where, that was before the Holgorsen and Snow news broke. And so, maybe it's a deal where he wants to talk about it, but can't, and kind of makes them all over the place. But
hey, can I stop you real quick? And this is for you, Mark, and everybody else, because maybe this will come up Monday. When do you think Dana Holgorsen was contacted?
What time did the game end against UCLA?
Better have been halftime of Purdue.
Yeah.
Would it surprise you guys if this was a Matt Lubick deal where you remember Frost before Lubick was on the staff had him watch film weekly on Nebraska?
Yeah.
Would it surprise you that Dana, even at another school, him and Rule have been talking for a while, and maybe Dana has checked in and looked at some Nebraska stuff?
I think that would surprise the other school.
This has had to have been ongoing, like on standby.
Maybe
back to January,
because it can't be Sunday morning you wake up and go, well, we got to change, because as Schmitty, you were just saying, all of what you've seen has been there for a while.
Yeah. Say this for Rule though. What I appreciated this week is he didn't get overly defensive, and he just came out and said, listen, 18 points a game, it's not good enough, right? It's just not. And I think we've seen coaches in the past kind of double down and just say, oh no, this is our team. We got to execute better. It's not the coaches, they're doing it. But Rule more or less said, no, it ain't good enough. And we're going to do something about it. What I wonder about though, is if you're the players, right? And think about this week too. And it was brought up in the stream. I can't remember who said it, but Rule was out recruiting this week during a critical preparation week. And here's Dana Holgorsen kind of out of nowhere. I'm guessing he doesn't have established relationships with all the players. Right. So like, how is that going? How is that going just in terms of the players paying attention, listening? Are they buying what he's selling? But at the same time, it didn't look like they were buying what was being sold pre-Holgorsen. So what's the worst that can happen, right?
You have a new
like,
voice.
They don't believe and don't execute? Okay, well, that's already happening. You might as well try it. I just wonder how much of a direct influence he's having and what that means for kind of just leadership, stability, belief, all those things in the locker room right now.
I think, you know what? I think it sends a message to your locker room. Yeah. Hey, we're not going to stand around and stand pat and be 5-4. We're not going to throw away this season. I don't care if you're young or old. We're going to be dialed in. Okay. And if I'm going to say stuff about you and I'm going to hold you to a high standard, I'm going to hold myself to a high standard. Okay. And I'm going to turn up every stone to find a way to get this program to move in the right direction. That's how I would look at it as a player. Because those guys want to win. Okay. That would be a miserable friggin' offseason to be 5-7 again. It would be awful, completely awful to just lose your last 6 games, and that's what you go into the offseason with so much doubt and going, damn, I thought year 3 was going to be the year. We're still not going to a bowl game. And then those guys that came back, that their sole purpose was go to a bowl game, you wouldn't mention them. Even Ty Robinson and Ja'Cory Barney, who I think are the 2 best players on this roster, you'd be like, hey, Ty, thanks for the memes. But, man, dude, you didn't even go to a bowl game.
No, in 6 seasons. So that's where I want to kind of wrap.
Can I do one thing here? One more thing.
Yeah.
I think we also, not as much as Holgorsen, but the addition of Phil Snow is kind of intriguing to me as well. Because I think Phil Snow is not here to find a spot on Nebraska's staff. I mean, the guy wants to retire, okay? He wants to get up at 4:30, sit in the lanai, read the paper, go and hang with his football buddies and talk football at breakfast at 6, go to dinner at 4:30, be home to watch the evening news, and then he's in bed by 8.
He's just leaving Shirley's Diner as we speak.
I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
But I wonder if Phil Snow was brought in to look at the dynamic between John Butler and Tony White. Because there are times this year where the defensive play call is not matched by what the DBs are doing.
What? Hold on. Hold on.
It's not communication.
I'm not doubting you, Gary, but that's a big deal. So I'm just I'm just asking for a little expansion on that idea. So disagreement between John Butler, who just came in from a stint as the defensive backs coach in the NFL, most recently the Bills, left because he wanted to be a defensive coordinator. So he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Been there, done that, veteran guy. So you're saying maybe some discord between
not knocking of heads, but 2 guys that think differently. That one is the defensive coordinator, and how do you guys? I've done for 3 weeks now stuff that's happened in the defensive backfield. Wonder, God, is this the first time all year I have to say out loud that, man, they miss Evan Cooper? Because Cooper knew that defense really well. So I still think it's a learning process for a new guy to come in that late. And I mean, Matt Rule wants both of them on the staff, and you should want both of them on the staff, but you got to be able to. Why is the front end and the back end sometimes misaligned? Because here's the thing, that back end is going to get kind of young next year with some intriguing talent. So I just think it's a veteran guy that is going to observe and see where there are some holes that you go, okay, we can fix that. Some guys' athletic ability you're not going to be able to fix. You're not going to be able to say, hey, the safeties all of a sudden overnight are going to be better. They're not. Nebraska's safeties are getting exposed. But why is the dink and dunk so successful over the last 3 weeks? Is it talent? Is it scheme? Is it what we're not doing? It's all of those things. It's just, you know what? We got 3 games to go. We got to get to a bowl game. We want to finish strong, but we're also thinking about 25 because we got to hit the ground running. I don't know. Just my observation. I don't have any inside knowledge, but looking at sometimes where it seems like there's miscommunication from the call to what's happening on the back end, I wonder if that's part of, hey, Phil, can you watch, can you observe and see what the difference is on what's going on?
Is it as simple as who's right? This is what we need to do. No, this is what we need to do. I mean, is it that going on in that defensive room with the secondary versus the call that Tony wants? And is there some rigidness with what Tony wants to do and knows to do versus some suggestions from the NFL guy? I mean, who knows? But does this just expedite Mr. Tony's wandering eye to go get a head job somewhere else?
I don't know. I mean, I think I tell you what, I think he's encouraged about next year's defense as well, because they're going to be a whole different type one where they're going to be fast. I don't know. You got some big brains that are in the defensive room. But guys, I bring this up because why all of a sudden has the defense gone into this roller coaster?
Yeah.
I
just don't get, Elijah, pop in here. Sorry to jump in, but I just don't get the whole flat look where it was just no passion Indiana, no passion UCLA. I don't have an answer for that, but they just looked. They're okay. Physically, you're here, but there was no spark.
Yeah.
I need that answer. Why did you come out in two big games, looking like I got to go put the helmet on?
Well, you know what the difference is, because we talk a lot about the back end, which is fair. I mentioned it earlier, like one of the worst secondaries in the country statistically over the past 3 weeks. Paul chimes in and says, "Well, it's because they're playing better teams." That's a part of it. Like there's been some
not wrong.
Played. That's a part of it. But you look at the difference in intensity from your front four defensively in that Ohio State game. That's why Will Howard didn't look like a world beater. He still statistically had a good day, but the defensive line was able to make him uncomfortable. I think that's the big difference between what we saw against UCLA and what we saw against Ohio State. And you can throw Indiana in there as well. Is like right now, Nebraska's best secondary is getting a pass rush and getting after the quarterback and making him uncomfortable, which is, I mean, that's how a lot of NFL teams do it too. Like that's what happens whenever you play good quarterbacks and play good teams. Like you have to be able to make a quarterback uncomfortable with your defensive line. But that's been the big difference I've seen. It is like, it's not like Nebraska's secondary went out there and was great against Ohio State. Your defensive line was great against Ohio State. It made the secondary look better. Like, I don't know. That's just outside observation of like, well, what's the roller coaster ride? I think the roller coaster ride hasn't been the secondary. The secondary has been consistently not great. It's been the defensive line that's been a little bit up and down in terms of how much havoc they're able to cause in a game.
Well, that's scary. I'm with you, Elijah, because if Nebraska doesn't generate pressure, they're in trouble. They only got 1 sack against UCLA, and I think officially, according to PFF, they had 12 pressures, I believe. I don't know. It's the thing that sucks about a bye week here is you either want to deal with reality or you're like, man, this is a letdown. Is Nebraska a 5-4 football team across the board, coaching, talent, performance? Or do you think they're better?
No.
And let's be honest. Don't like go, they're a 7-2.
No.
Is Nebraska coaching, talent, performance? Is the record, what is the line? The record is what the record says what the record says you are.
You are as good as your record says you are.
Boom. Thank you.
They are lucky to be from a talent, from a coaching standpoint. They have been out coached, out schemed, out prepped, clearly in the losses, and the teams that are worth a damn that they played, they haven't beaten. They beat Colorado. And Colorado's flipped it. Colorado's second half, from the second half of the Nebraska game to where they're at right now, they're a different football team. They're a good football team. They're a good staff. I mean, they're good. They're a team that would drill Nebraska if they played again right now.
Yeah, it's progression or regression, right?
Oh, and it's gone
pretty
the other
obvious what Nebraska's doing.
It's gone the other way.
This is let's have and I know we got to run. Let's finish this with a discussion. I'm not Mr. Transitive Property or guy or gal, but I should point out that Nebraska basketball beat UTRGV by 20 and Creighton only beat them by 13. But with that said, sitting here on November 9th with 3 games to play, who would you rather be this morning? 4-5 UCLA or 5-4 Nebraska?
Give me UCLA all day. I was saying that earlier. They look like they're ready. They look confident. They look fast, physical, big, super talented.
Let's say they also look like a team that has learned and gotten better from their loss.
Yes, they've gotten better. That's a great point.
Yeah. But between those 3 things that you brought up, Gary, you brought up talent, coaching, and performance. Those 3 factors. I take talent off the table and say you're having a coaching and performance issue. The coaching is what gets you the performance. Talent is a factor. Of course it is. But at the end of the day, coaching is about making the sum of the parts better. Period. That's what it's about. The opposite is happening with Nebraska. The opposite. The sum of the parts should be way better. And I think that's almost unanimous among the fans. Like, it should look better than this. Nebraska is not derelict in talent comparatively. The level that they've recruited at, going back years, Nebraska's always top 25, top 30 recruiting classes every year. But they don't perform as a top 25 or top 30 program. every year.
Yep.
So what is that? Is that you struck out on the recruiting trail year after year after year after? No, that's just no. You cannot buy that. You cannot buy that whatsoever. And if you just look at a height, weight, speed, whatever, I'll take Nair, I'll take Emmett Johnson, I'll take Ja'Cory Barney, I'll take Fidone, right? I'll take a lot of those guys. I'll take Bennett, take Justin Evans, take Ben Scott. Like there's a lot of those dudes that, they have the measurables. They're fine from that standpoint. Take Raiola. Hell, Georgia wanted him. Ohio State wanted him.
Yeah, nobody's throwing away your quarterback.
Yeah, it's just it's just on and on and on. Like I refuse to hear that talent discussion anymore. It's not your talent is comparable. Your talent. Listen, I'm not saying you're top end and you're ready to compete for a national title talent. You don't have that, but you have. What do you do? You have good enough talent to go to a freaking bowl.
Well,
at some point since 2016.
Yes, you do. But on this current roster on offense, you don't have an RB1. You don't have a consistent wide receiver 1. You have guys that, hey, you could be an RB2 and you'd be really good, or you'd be an WR2. I mean, this is the thing I'm going to keep a close eye on going into the offseason. 2 straight years, Nebraska essentially has fanned on a key skill position in the portal. Quarterback and wide receiver. Now, they need to be more consistent, the 2 that you went and got, because they're at times killing you, whether it be the want to block or when you got to make a catch like last Saturday, you make a catch. Okay? To wrap this all up, this is the one thing about Rule that I do give him credit, and he's new here. We've all been here for a while. We've seen way too many coaches at Nebraska when it feels like it's slipping away. They're like, you know what? All about the process, okay? Just got to keep with it. You know what? It's going to be cool. We're chill. I have described Nebraska football as very casual this year. Very, very casual, okay? Dylan is very competitive, but Dylan is very chill. Nebraska football this year has been very casual. Now, all of a sudden, Nebraska football in only year 2 of a head coach is showing you, all right, we can't let this spiral, because you know what? Post-game Saturday and Monday, I went, God, I need to go back. This looks all too familiar of coaches at Nebraska when things start to get squeezed.
No, you aren't wrong, dude.
Instead of excuses, you look for solutions. Not everybody is built to find a solution, but at least you're attempting to do it earlier than other coaches have done here, and maybe it pops for you. But those last 3 games are pretty damn important.
Can't wait for La La Land next Saturday. Elijah will be on site for us.
Yes.
Gary Sharp, the Iron Horse. Sharpie, we know you have an extensive background with things and spots in L.A., so we need a suggestion for where Elijah's going to do Friday and Saturday from.
Oh, to do the show?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking Friday. We're in a hotel Thursday night, and then we flip over to an Airbnb on Friday. I think the show may be done from the hotel lobby on Friday afternoon. Saturday is up in the air. We'll figure that out. Play it by ear.
Okay, so there's a place that's on USC's campus. My brother lives out there, so I'm a little bit familiar with that area. It would be chock full of USC people. It's called a place called Traditions. It's right there in University Park, which is adjacent to where the Coliseum is. Yeah. Traditions. Yeah. Traditions. There's another good spot to drink called the 901 Bar and Grill. Not a bad place.
Okay.
Okay.
Skid Row is another spot.
The one great thing,
whiskey.
There are going to be a ton of Nebraska fans there. I don't care if Nebraska's 5-4 and USC is 4-5. There are going to be. I mean, when Nebraska goes to the West Coast in the new Big Ten, look at the Beatles, who went to Oregon to play volleyball the other night and set another record. Yeah. When Nebraska goes out to the West Coast, regardless of sport, because of the alumni base and the fan bases out there, they're going to show up. It will almost, if Nebraska plays well next Saturday afternoon, I think at times it will sound like Memorial Stadium West. That's my bold prediction. But they're going to have to play well, because The team that throws the first punch next Saturday will be the team that wins the game, because both teams are wondering, who in the hell are we? And if you lose, you go, oh, thank God. We got 2 more games to get bowl eligible. Hell no. Throw the first punch next week. I want a spicy week around here.
Same. Yeah, it's been intense. Sharpie, we will catch up with you manana and do this again with the Average Joe pod. But thanks for making time, dude, as you're doing the old UNO World Tour.
Yes, I was in Orlando yesterday. I'm in Minneapolis today. I'll be in Las Vegas next week.
Woo!
So catch me on my tour. You can get tickets at the website. We got a very active agent. We got a good tour out there. We had a good crowd in Orlando. Should have a good crowd this afternoon here in Minneapolis. By the way, Minnesota football got great news. Rutgers Monangai is out today.
Ooh.
Yeah. Hey, they're feeling good about their football program here.
Dude, they're playing good ball. Sharpie, have a great call.
They got Penn State next week. Guys, I appreciate it. Thank you. Loose tuna lips. This is how I clap. Suck it.
Yep. And then he just leaves.
There he goes.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Cranack, love you, brother. Thanks for popping in.
Godspeed, man. All right.
Elijah, appreciate you, man. And back at you. And we will talk tomorrow, 10:30 live pod for the Average Joe show, just to cross promote here, and then off to brunch for Junior's 18th birthday.
Hey, how about that? 18. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Good job, Pops.
They get old quick, don't they, Mark?
Yeah, good job, Pops. Nice job.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Talk to you next time.
All right, y'all.